Great. I have some response from Trusha, Naveen, Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Um, I, it's good to see that you're able to hear us clearly. So we will start our webinar for today. Before we start, I just want to give you a quick recap on why we are doing this webinar. There are a lot of us who have seen our previous webinar, previous first part of the series, wherein we covered what are the critical changes happening in this new model. So before I talk about what we have covered in the previous webinar, so as we all know, Google Maps is changing its business model, and there are certain license changes, there are certain pricing changes which are happening during this transition. This has already been implemented in other countries. India is the last one where this change is going to get implemented very soon. This actually gives us an edge. We understand what are the problem areas where we need to work on, what are the problems that other people have faced, and we can help you overcome those challenges. Now, optimization definitely is going to play a major role in making sure that your pricing doesn't shoot up. So in this webinar, we are going to cover that. So I'll just share my presentation with you. Just 1 second. All right, I hope you can see my screen now. So we did our first webinar on 25th of June last month. We have already shared the recording. If you'd like to see the recording, just drop me an email and we can share the recording with you as well. You can drop an email at marketing@leptonsoftware.com. We covered in that webinar, what are the changes that are happening and how exactly it is going to impact the current user. Now, for people who have seen the previous webinar, you understand that part. And in today's webinar, we are going to talk about what is the pricing, what is the difference in the new pricing, and how we can optimize our usage, our API optimization, how we can optimize our API to make sure that the billing doesn't shoot up, and how we can save with the new model. So I have Jatin here with me, who will be taking you over, what are the new changes that we are going to cover in this presentation. So here is the agenda that you see here, and I'm passing it over to Jatin to take ahead the presentation. Just 1 minute, please.
Thanks, Neha. Hi, everyone. So today we'll be talking about pricing and places API implementation mechanisms. So hi, everyone. So topics that we are going to talk about today are pricing basics. I'll come up with some certain examples. stating the use cases, pricing tiers, places changes, places pricing, and optimizations for maps and routes. So how does the pricing and billing work with the new model? That's what I'm going to talk about. So I covered this briefly in the last webinar as well. It's a post-paid model. The new model which Google is going to come up with in India, and you pay. Every enterprise pays for the amount of usage that he makes for certain APIs which he consumes. And as a matter of fact, you have to have an API key and a valid billing account in order to make sure that you are able to use Google Maps. And when we talk about pricing of Google Maps, it's a tiered based pricing, which if you happen to consume certain number of calls for an API, you would be falling in a certain tier. So there are 7 tiers. If you happen to go with the reseller like us, and otherwise, if you apply your own credit card, I think I covered all these details in the last webinar itself. But just to give you a refresher, you can either apply your own credit card to your billing account, and that's how you can enable the billing, or else you can go with the reseller like Lepton to avail higher tier discounts. So if you go with your own credit card, you can only access up to tier 2 discounting. If you happen to go with reseller, you can access tier 2 and above, and you can have that can play a major role in terms of costing and bringing down the cost drastically. And then I'll talk about the changes in Places API. There are different implementation mechanisms about Places API, and then directions and distance matrix are classified into basic and advanced calls. I covered all this in the last webinar. And then usage over mobile, which means native map loads are free in the new plan. So So when you do a setup, once you happen to have a valid billing account and you're trying to make use of Google Maps APIs, so against every sub billing account, you get $200 free monthly quota. So so why this has been done, why this provision has been made in Google Maps APIs new plan. So Google was getting a lot of feedback from developer community that we need a developer license wherein we can test our application. So Google came up with the idea of giving $200 free monthly quota against each and every sub-billing account. And best part is it is available every month. So what does $200 quota buy for you? You have unlimited number of native mobile map loads, native dynamic map loads, static map loads, embedded APIs, embedded advanced. If you talk about embedded advanced APIs, you have 14,000 map loads. If you talk about static maps, you have about 100,000 static map loads. If you talk about dynamic maps, you have 28,000 dynamic map loads. And similarly, static street view and dynamic street view. So as I mentioned, pricing is based on the tier you are falling in. Let's say you are making certain number of calls. If you had so first, let's say if you happen to make somewhere about 6 lakh calls, or let's say 5 lakh calls, so you will be charged. So first 1 lakh calls will be falling under tier 1 pricing. The rest of the calls above 1 lakh will be charged at the price of second tier. So that's tier pricing. And if you go if you go with your own credit card and do the setup by yourself, you can access up to tier 2 pricing, and which is to say discounting up to tier 2. If you go with the reseller, you can access up to tier 7 pricing, and subsequently the relevant discounts. So here is an example. Let's say I am making 1.5 million geocoding requests per month. So as per tier 1, I can have up to 1 lakh or 100,000 calls, which will be falling under tier 1. So those will be charged at the price of $5 per 1,000 calls. All the calls beyond 100,000 calls, 100,000 geocodes, those will be charged at the price of $4 per 1,000 calls. So which means I am making up till 1 lakh calls. I'm falling in tier 1. Above that, I'm falling in tier 2. So which will lead to the total pricing of about $6,100 per month. So this is applicable up to tier 2. This is basically the pricing of tier 2. I'll take an example wherein let's say I'm trying to make a booking. I'm trying to book a ticket for myself for an event. I'll discuss all the steps involved and the relevant map loads and the maps API calls which I'll be making and the pricing for them. So let's say it's an application of an enterprise wherein I, as a user, am trying to make a booking for myself. So using the mobile application, I will browse for the event. I will check the relevant event which I want to make booking for, and then I'll make the online booking by providing my, let's say, address and the relevant details which I'm supposed to provide. And then ticketing system will return an email to me, and a calendar appointment will be made in my calendar. So let's go through each and every step in detail. Now, so here what I'm trying to do is user is going to receive an email with estimated predictive travel time to the concert. Just hold on, just hold on. So here, what all actions are going to happen? Once I make the booking, I would also want to see where I would be parking my vehicle. So I'm trying to find the list of parking slots available in the vicinity. So here, I would want to view the parking the parking slot available and the relevant time it would take me to go from parking slot up till the venue of the event, walking distance. So in these actions, what I will be making use of is the distance matrix basic call, which will be priced at the rate of $5 per 1,000 calls, and one static map to view the parking slot. So there, it's a static map which I would be making use of over the mobile application native map load, which is free of cost in the new map. Now, once I've made the purchase, once I've bought the ticket, I would be getting an email with the details about predictive travel time, which means it's an advanced booking which I've done, and I would be returned the expected time it will take me to reach the venue from my current location, or let's say the location which I've quoted as my starting point. So that's one, and user would be viewing this over the mobile map load, which is a static map load which we would be making use of. So here it's a direction advanced call because I'm making use of predictive travel time to estimate the time it will take me in future to reach the venue. So that will be priced at the rate of $10 per 1,000 calls, and one static map will be charged at the price of 0 because it is free. So along with, once I make the booking, I will try to see the parking slots available. I would also want to view, where can I have my dinner before attending the show or the event. So there, when I'm browsing or surfing, where can I have the dinner? I would also need to understand, how much time it will take me for the whole journey, for the whole transaction. So predictive travel time of directions API, or let's say distance matrix API, can be used to estimate how much time it will take me to travel, and let's say plus 1 hour for dinner. That's the assumption. So this is going to consume directions advanced call, which is going to be charged at $10 per 1,000 calls. And the scenario, let's discuss the scenario. A day before the event, user would receive an email a day before with the estimated predictive travel time to reach the venue, and user views the interactive maps and directions on Google Maps mobile, which is the native app. So here, because native mobile map loads are going to be free, I will not be charged anything. I will only be charged for making use of directions advanced call, which is why I'm able to see the predicted travel time to reach the destination, which is charged at $10 per 1,000 calls. Next example is the hotel finder, wherein I'm trying to make a booking for a hotel. Let's discuss the steps involved here and the relevant pricing. So I would go to the website, hotel's website, or let's say any aggregator website, and I try to search for a hotel in a location of my choice. So I would be making use of autocomplete feature of Places API and try to enter my desired location where I'm searching. So let's say I enter 5 characters, and then I would choose the relevant location which I feel like, which are given as suggestions by Google Places API. So when we talk of autocomplete, in premium plan, autocomplete was available only and only with autocomplete with characters feature. In pay-as-you-go model, you have autocomplete with session ID. It's a different mechanism. It's a new mechanism. Using that mechanism, I would be making use of, I would be making use of autocomplete with session ID feature, which will also give me the basic data of the places details call. So this will be charged at the rate of $17 per 1,000 calls, which means I am, so the advantage of autocomplete with session ID is I have unlimited number of characters. I do not get charged on the basis of number of characters which I am typing. And along with that, I also happen to get basic data of place details call. So places, when we talk of places details call, this is divided into 3 buckets now: basic, contact, and atmosphere. So basic bucket is free with autocomplete with session ID. I'll talk about each and every bucket in detail later. So talking about the steps, once I provide my location, a maps page gets rendered on the website, and with markers over the maps interface showcasing different hotels available. Let's say there are 6 hotels which are available in the vicinity, and I would also want to view the photographs of the hotels. I can zoom in, zoom out, pan in, pan out. So these are some of the actions which I will be making use of as a user over the aggregator's website. Talking about the costing and the quota. So displaying a dynamic map over a web application is something which is called as a maps JavaScript API or dynamic map loads. So this is going to cost me $7 per 1,000 calls, and place details call is going to cost me $17 per 1,000 calls, which means $0.017 per call multiplied by 6, because I am also viewing all the details for all the 6 hotels, and every photo is going to cost me $7 per 1,000 calls, which means if I happen to view a single photograph of a hotel, I would be charged at the rate of $0.007 for every photograph I make or I visualize. So multiplied with 6, because I'm viewing 6 photographs of each and every hotel. And then if I want to view, let's say, the reviews about each and every hotel, that is going to cost me $5 per 1,000 calls. So once the page renders, I would be able to view the photograph. Let's say if I happen to stumble upon a hotel and I go into the details. So I'm clicking on a photograph of a particular hotel. So that's where I'm viewing one photograph, and a static map of the location is also getting displayed, and the relevant content is also getting displayed. So displaying one photo of a place, it is going to cost me nothing because that is just for the photo. And then displaying a static map of the location is going to cost me $2 per thousand calls. And then displaying contact data from the corporate database. Similarly, if I happen to consume the place IDs, let's say if I have the place ID of the location, or let's say the hotel, and I want to make use of place details call, so that is going to cost me $17 per thousand calls, which includes only the basic bucket. Photographs from Google Maps APIs is going to cost me, as I mentioned earlier, $7 per thousand calls. Star ratings, which is about reviews of the hotel, is going to cost me $5 per thousand calls. So this is the data from Atmosphere bucket. Now let's talk about implementation of Places API and the new mechanisms which are available and the relevant pricing. So place details call is divided into three buckets: basic data, contact data, and atmosphere data. So basic bucket includes place ID, title, address, lat long, location component for the point of interest or the place in question. Contact data involves website URL, opening hours, closing hours, phone number. And similarly, atmosphere data includes pricing and the rating reviews about the POI. So when we talk of places details, I can make use of either the place ID. So if I happen to make use of place ID and then fire a place details call, that is going to cost me $17 per thousand calls, including the basic data. If I talk about atmosphere character, which means autocomplete character, which means the mechanism which we were following in the premium plan, because my in the autocomplete widget I was charged for the number of characters which I was which I was typing. So that is going to be charged at the rate of $2.83 per thousand calls. As I mentioned, the new mechanism, which is autocomplete with session ID, gives me the freedom of making use of unlimited number of characters till the time a session is valid, and it also gives me the basic data from places details. That is going to cost me $17 per thousand calls. Another mechanism, which is new mechanism in this plan, is find place by text, which is going to cost me $17 per thousand calls. So find place by text gives you in the output, only and only one result, which is the point of interest I'm looking for. Let's say if I want to search for, let's say, cyber city in Gurgaon, so this is going to return me only one result, and I can get the relevant data about place detail or the result which I have gotten in the response. Similarly, if I talk about text search, nearby search, and query autocomplete, which were part of premium plan as well, so so that by default includes basic contact and atmosphere data. So that would be charged at the rate of $40 per thousand calls. And similarly, if I happen to make use of photographs, so that is additional and charged at the rate of $7 per thousand calls. So how do we go about implementing? Now we have the freedom of choosing different mechanisms and the data bucket that we want to make use of. So I can go with place ID, I can go with autocomplete with session ID, I can go with autocomplete with characters, find place by text and find user place, and I can choose the relevant data bucket which I want to make use of: basic, contact, and atmosphere. And then additionally, if you want to have access to photographs as well, that is also available. So choose your combination, choose your you know matrix which you want. You can go with place ID. With place ID, as I mentioned, basic data is free, is available by default in that. So if I want to make use of, let's say, if I have place ID and I also want contact data, I will only be charged $17 and $3 for contact data additionally. So that's the freedom that we have in this new model. So an example here, in premium plan, let's say if I were to view a photograph, I would be charged 2 credit per photograph. And I would be also be paying to Google. I would be charged the credits for making use of autocomplete feature, and then the relevant data buckets about, let's say, the reviews and all. So that was part of the place details call, and photographs were additional 2 credits per photograph. In the new model, I would be charged $7 per thousand calls for photographs, $5 for atmosphere data, and $3 for contact data. And supposedly, if I am making use of autocomplete with session ID, I would be getting basic data free with it, and this would be charged at the rate of $17 per thousand calls. So here is, so as I mentioned earlier, places details is divided into 3 buckets: basic, contact, and atmosphere. We have to apply a due diligence, which all data sets would I be needing as per my business requirements, and I can choose the relevant bucket, and accordingly I would be charged by Google. So what you can do is, I'll show an example. So when you fire a place details call, you can make use of the parameter field, and there you can specify the data buckets which you want in your solution, and you will be charged accordingly. Of course, as a mandate, you have to use key, and that's really essential going forward. If we talk about pay-as-you-go model. So if I happen to specify the relevant fields in the fields parameter, I will be charged accordingly. If I don't specify any fields, I will be charged at the rate of all. Google will understand that I am making use of all the fields, although I may not be requiring, but I will be charged for all the fields available. So find place from text. It's a new service, as I mentioned earlier. You can specify, let's say, a unique identification which I want to search for. Let's say Cyber City in Gurgaon, which is a unique entity. You will be getting in response only the one result. You can specify either a phone number. You can specify, it could be a text, as I mentioned, Cyber City in Gurgaon, and you will get the relevant details about it. So this is price charged at the rate of $17 per thousand calls. So here is so it's a comparison between autocomplete with session ID and autocomplete with characters, the earlier mechanism in premium plan which was available. So let's say if I start searching for any point of interest or location, and as a user I'll start typing the characters, I will be charged at the rate of $2.83 per thousand characters. Additionally, if I need basic data bucket, let's say I only need the lateral and the address of the point of interest, I will be charged at the rate of $17 per thousand calls. Instead, if I go with autocomplete with session ID, I have the freedom of making unlimited number of characters till the time my session is valid, and basic data is free with session ID, autocomplete with session ID. So here I'm making a saving of $2.83 per thousand calls. So that's something we need to evaluate going forward. Which mechanism is going to help me out or going to be economical for me from costing perspective. Some of the estimation watch points, so we should evaluate, using places autocomplete with session ID. As I mentioned earlier, it includes basic data that is available freely with it, which is going to, in the long run, I'm going to make use of, if I happen to make use of autocomplete with session ID, I'm my costing is definitely going to come down. And then we have to think about, do I need data from atmosphere and contact buckets, and accordingly you can charge, because if you happen to use atmosphere and contact data, you are going to be charged additionally. And then I need to figure out whether I really need to make use of Street View, because Street View is expensive. And then supposedly if yes, whether it is dynamic or a static street view, which would suffice my business requirement. Dynamic, you know this, it is interactive. If I need to have an interactive view for street view for my users, that's something I need to evaluate. And then if I talk about routes, which is directions, distance, and roads API, they are divided into two categories, basic and advanced. I need to figure out whether I need the advanced calls or the basic calls. Advanced calls include estimated time of arrival, expected time of arrival, which is advanced feature of directions and distance matrix APIs. And then you can also make use of embedded APIs. Basic modes are free, so that's something we need to evaluate going forward. Let's talk about optimization of APIs in terms of maps and routes. As you know, going forward, APIs are divided into three categories: maps, routes, and places. I'll specifically talk about maps and routes optimizations here. So static maps value. As I mentioned, native map loads are free in pay-as-you-go model. So I need to evaluate whether my use case suffices. If I go with native map loads, or let's say static map loads, it could be native, it could be on the web, but then static map loads are, how beneficial are they from costing perspective? I need to figure out from my use case whether there is a requirement for users to view a dynamic map or a static map. So accordingly, I will be charged. Similarly, Street View API, again, there are two categories, dynamic and static. I need to evaluate whether having a dynamic Street View would be sufficient for my users, or I need a static Street View for my users. Now, optimization about routes. So when you talk of directions API, a basic call would have max 10 waypoints. And what is an advanced directions API call? If I have either of these, let's say if I have more than 10 waypoints, it is by default an advanced call. If I use the parameter optimize equal to true, which is about realigning the order of, so that's something again an advanced call. And third is, let's say if I use ETA, which is expected time of arrival, which tells you how much time it will take you to reach from point A to point B, considering traffic conditions, current traffic conditions, or let's say the future traffic conditions. So all these requests are advanced calls. So I need to figure out whether I would be okay making basic calls or the advanced calls. Similarly, talking about the ETA or the traffic conditions, one has to do some thought process has to be involved, wherein I need to evaluate whether I need to make use of traffic conditions or not for directions and distance matrix APIs. Now talking of roads, so both the features snap to road and nearest road, both are advanced calls, and I need to figure out, from a use case whether I really need snap to road feature or let's say nearest road feature in my use case. So these are a couple of things from optimization perspective which we need to evaluate and figure out whether they would be sufficient to make sure my use case is getting sufficed or not. So that was it about today. In the next webinar, we will be talking about Places API optimization, Google Cloud Billing Console, and terms of service, and question and answers. So I'm handing it over to Neha. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jatin. I hope the presentation was useful for you. We have some questions which we will be addressing now. All right. So Jatin, I have first question here. So Jatin will be taking ahead the questions here. Okay. So, Ravi Shankar, yes, we will be sharing the presentation with you by the end of the day or by tomorrow. We will share the recording and presentation. All right. Amit has asked a question related to autocomplete feature. How long session is valid? So, Jatin, over to you.
So to answer the question, session is valid. Google doesn't specify any time duration for how long session is valid. It is not clear.
Okay, all right. So next question by Amit is what is CPM looks like cents per month, but it comes out from webinar that it is $100 per request, 1,000 per request. So yeah.
So as I mentioned, CPM is calls per thousand. Of course, the terminology is somewhat confusing, but that's how it is.
Next question by MR is what is CPM looks like cent per month, but it comes out. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm reading the previous question. Okay, so the question is what is QPS for directions and distance matrix API? Can this be increased?
So QPS for directions is 50, as it was in the premium plan. Yes, it can be increased, but this requires approval from Google.
Tier 2, is it helpful for us to go via Lepton software? This is a question by Nabeen Limbu.
Okay, and that's an interesting question. Even if let's say your usage is falling in tier one, or let's say your usage is falling within tier, it's not falling in any tier, it is falling within $200 per month quota. I would still suggest going with the reseller. The advantages we provide you, the technical support, that's unmatched. And just to give you credential reference software, we have helped a lot of enterprises in migrating to pay-as-you-go model. We have experience of implementing, and we know what all can be the hurdles going forward. We know how to address them, and then we are one of the premier partners of Google for the Maps business in Southeast Asia. And that's something you should be evaluating, and also the oldest. I forgot. So that's something you need to evaluate. While deciding whether you want to go with your own credit card or you want to go with the reseller.
So just to add to Jatin's point on Nabeen, you can always get on a call with the our concerned person. We can connect you with the team, and if you find there is any value addition, you can evaluate that before you actually make that decision. And yeah, you can take your call on that basis. All right. So Kiran has mentioned he's asking for presentation. Yes, we will be sharing that by the end of the webinar. Krishna has asked a question, is the autocomplete session valid for a user or for license holder?
So session is valid. It is independent of the license holder. It is valid for the interface, or let's say the application session which is open. Let's say I as a user, I'm using autocomplete feature of the solution of an enterprise. So till the time that widget, I keep entering the characters. So there is a certain time duration against it for which it is valid. Google has not specified the time duration, but then it is valid for a certain amount of time. So this is valid for user for a certain specific time.
Krishna, I hope your question got answered. You can let us know if there is any clarification required. A question by Abhijit. What will be pricing quota for Places SDK for native application, Android and iOS?
As such, there is no specific quota. You get charged for the amount of consumption you happen to make for places SDKs for iOS and Android. Under premium plan, this was free. When I say free, although it was not part of the offering, but technically you were able to make use of mobile places SDK, part of the premium plan offering. So going forward, it is going to be charged at the same price, as you have been paying for places API.
All right. So the next question by Satish: whether only Google Map API for loading a map is free in mobile app, all other API will be charged.
Yes, that is correct. Only the native mobile map loads are free. If you consume, let's say, directions API through the native app, you will be charged.
Question by Hiranya: how the existing users will get charged against new pricing rules? That is, will charge against old pricing rules or new pricing rules?
So in the earlier model, which is premium plan, you were charged, you know, on the basis of number of credits you would make. You would, let's say if you would consume a place details call, you would be charged 2 credits, and you were paying. You had to buy the license. It was a prepaid model, which means you were committed for 12 months with Google, and you have to buy credits upfront. But in the pay-as-you-go model, you will be making monthly payments for the consumption which you have made in the last month. And then, if you talk about pricing, it is not based on the credits. It's a simple between the calls and the dollars. Yeah. Thanks.
Another question by Naveen is: what is the payment type with Lepton, prepaid or postpaid? So the model is actually,
See, this model,
yeah.
model is postpaid model. As I mentioned, you will be making use of certain APIs, and then you will pay to the reseller. But then we would need a PO from you upfront about so you will have to come up with the estimates about the number of calls which you will be making for each and every API, and then we will work out a costing, as per Google's norms, and then you will have to share a PO. Terms of service, this is something which my sales team can comment about. Yeah.
Well, I hope that answered your question, Naveen. Again, sales team would be the right person to address this. The model of Google is postpaid as such, but I think all we need is commitment at this stage. All right, so moving on to the next question by Krishna. How does the pricing looks beyond tier 2?
Okay, so I can't comment about the percentage discounts, in each and every tier, because actual discounting will depend on the consumption of each and every API which you will be happening, which you will be making use of. And then, as a matter of fact, I mentioned this in the last webinar as well. We have helped enterprises in saving 70% of the cost with the optimizations and the tier discounts, which you can avail only and only through resellers like us.
I believe, Jatin, I think we what we want to convey here is, we can always tell you how much discount you're actually eligible for based on your usage, your calls that you're making, and we can get on a separate call. We can evaluate your usage and tell you whatever is the maximum discount we can offer you. So reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you out with the proper pricing. All right, next question by Satish. If we go through Lepton, means whether we don't want to provide credit card details for billing?
Yes, if you go with the reseller, it will be the responsibility of reseller to make sure that yes, billing is activated, and you don't need to provide any credit card here.
Right. A question by Akash means Lepton software is a reseller for Google Maps API, which is cheaper than usual pricing by Google itself. Well, yeah, you do get actually added advantage via going through a partner. Uh, Google follows a partner model everywhere. So they, unless either you are making the payment through credit card online, or you are going through a partner, you will not get telephonic contact. If you want a proper support, it's always best to go through a partner. You get better support, you get a telephonic support, and you can actually rely on somebody, in case of emergency. You get better pricing. So overall, and all in all, it's always better to go ahead with the partner if you have a higher, especially if you have a higher usage. Okay. Next question by Kiran. Please share PPT for session first. Yes, we will share the presentation and recording for that as well, Kiran. Krishna, Mapload API are not free, only for native. What is the scenario for web Mapload?
So web map loads are definitely going to be charged, and there is a certain pricing associated with it depending on the number of calls which you will be making.
For web Mapload, what would be the cost?
As I mentioned earlier, depending on the amount of usage which you'll be making, you will be able to get subsequent discounts, and you will be charged accordingly for the number of calls you make.
So the last question was asked by Jasveer and Krishna both. So I hope the question has been answered. And you can always reach out to us. We can help you, give you the exact pricing. Next question: do you have any unlimited usage packs?
No, it is not available. There is no such tier which offers unlimited number of calls.
I believe, Irfan, the whole agenda of this model is, you are basically using, whatever you're paying for, whatever you're using. So I think this model doesn't actually have unlimited usage packs. Rest, you can always reach out to the sales team. They can try and provide you the best discounted pricing possible. All right. Naveen, if we go via Lepton, do we have a way to validate the API request count from Google Maps?
I understand you're trying to know whether let's say if you are seeing X number of calls in your console, how do you make sure that yes, you have made only X number of calls? I understand, that's what your question is. So to validate this, first and foremost, Google is giving you access to the dashboard and the console wherein you can see the number of calls which you have made for certain APIs. That's one thing. Second is you can maintain a queue at your end wherein let's say there are n applications which are making use of let's say direct. So you can pass those requests to validate that yes, direction CPI and distance matrix CPI.
So I hope, Naveen, your question has been answered here. All right. So what are the procedure to start using Google Maps platform using Lepton? Whether anything needs to be submitted, we are currently in premium plan with you. This is a question by Satish. Satish, you can reach out to your account manager for this, and they would be able to guide you with this process. We have already, I'm sure, your account manager must be in touch with somebody regarding this. So I'll arrange a call back from your account manager to take care of this. Next question by Krishna. For free tier plan, we assume that there is no cap on number of end users.
As I mentioned, you get charged for the number of calls. It is independent of the number of users. It is only on the basis of number of calls which are going to make that you will be charged.
All right. I believe we've been able to cover all the questions that we've received as of now. We received some of the questions. I think all the questions that we received at the time of registration, we've been able to cover most of them. I understand that the information that we have provided during the webinar, you may find it a little generic because we are trying to cover the maximum audience possible. If you have a specific use case which you would like to discuss with us, wherein you want to understand what will be the pricing with the new model, how you can optimize it, how you can save maximum, please reach out to us. I will schedule a call with our, sales expert or probably with Jatin, whoever is the relevant person for this, and will assist you further. You can see the contact details on the screen. We will send you an email as well. You can reply to my email as well over there. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. Let me make sure we've covered all the questions. Yes, we have. So thank you so much for your time, and we hope that we've been able to answer all your questions. We'll be conducting one more webinar on 30th of July, talking about places optimization, billing console, terms of service, and rest of the questions around this. Once again, this model is actually going to get launched by early October. Google will be making a official announcement by mid of August. So now is actually the time to get started on this and prepare ourselves for this transition. And we'll be happy to help you out on this. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day ahead.